The hall smelled of old stone and roasted meats. Robb Stark, king in the north, stood stiff in a doublet far too fine for his comfort, sweat prickling at the nape of his neck as he watched his bride approach. Walder Frey had chosen Roslin, the most comely of his many daughters, for the honor of marrying a king. Robb had never met her before today, not truly, but oaths were oaths, and he was raised better than to break one, no matter how much his heart still ached for Talisa. Catelyn Stark sat beside him, quiet and reserved, though her eyes flicked with approval at her son's decision. This was duty, not love. Ned would have understood. The music played gently as the wedding took place, no daggers hidden in the notes this time. Walder Frey was smug but satisfied. The alliance was restored, if grudgingly. There was no red. Wedding, no arrows, no crossbows, no betrayal hidden in bread and salt. Instead, the war shifted. With the Freys firmly on Robb's side again, the Riverlands remained his. Edmure married another Frey girl without much complaint, eager to see peace in his domain. Walder Frey, though unpredictable, loved being owed. And now the king in the north owed him a crown's worth of loyalty. Robb and Roslin shared an awkward wedding night. She trembled, and he was cold, distant, still haunted by what might have been. But neither spoke of it. The war had taken more than warmth. It had taken innocence. A raven arrived the next morning. It bore news that chilled the hall even in summer. Bolton had taken Harrenhal, and he wasn't flying the wolf banner anymore. The morning after the wedding felt less like peace and more like a pause in a fight. Robb Stark stood alone on the balcony of the twins, his breath misting in the cold air. Roslin still slept, curled beneath thick furs. He hadn't touched her after that first awkward night. It wasn't cruelty, it was confusion. She had been kind, quiet, even pretty, but she wasn't Talisa. And his heart, still bruised and bleeding, refused to forget. But war didn't wait. For grief. Bolton's raven had brought more than just a report. It brought tension that clung to the room like fog. Harrenhal was a cursed place, but a strategic one. Robb had expected it to fall into Lannister hands eventually, but Rose, his bannerman, that stank of betrayal. Catelyn read the raven 3 times and said nothing at first. Then, in a voice as sharp as Winterfell's wind, she spoke. "We trusted him. Your father trusted him." Robb nodded. "So did I. And now?" Robb turned back to the view. "Now I wonder how many knives wait in the dark." The Freys didn't care. With the marriage complete, Walder saw no reason to play polite. He snorted at the mention of Bolton's betrayal. "Boltons are flayers, lad. Always have been. Just 'cause one wears a Stark cloak don't mean he won't skin you while you sleep." But he offered no help beyond that. No extra men, no gold, just scorn and greasy smiles. Still, Robb had one thing he didn't before. A united Riverlands. Walder might be bitter, but he was tied to Robb by blood now. Edmure, married and marginally happy, helped smooth things with the Tully lords. The Karstarks were still wary after the execution of Lord Rickard, but they hadn't left. Not yet. Robb knew his time was running out. He called a council in Riverrun the following fortnight. Catelyn, Lord Blackfish, Edmure and his closest generals gathered. Roslin sat quietly by his side, never speaking unless spoken to. In that silence, some lords began to grow fond of her. Others whispered she was a spy with ears sharper than daggers. It didn't matter now. War mattered. "We can't fight the Lannisters on 2 fronts, Robb said. "Not if Rose turns his cloak. We'll be bled dry before reaching the neck." "Then don't go south," Blackfish offered. "We hold the north. Retake Moat Cailin. Let them come to us." Catelyn disagreed. "They'll strangle us with gold and fire. Tywin Lannister won't rest until your head's on a spike. You need an alliance stronger than the Freys." That's when it happened. The idea. Marry Sansa to someone powerful. "She's still in King's Landing," Robb said. "A hostage." "Then we trade for her," Edmure said, "or take her back." A storm was coming, and they all knew it. But far away in the dungeons beneath Harrenhal, Rose Bolton stood, beside a figure cloaked in shadow. His voice was low, his smile tight. "They think the twins saved him. Let them think that. The North is a knife, my friend, and I plan to hold the hilt." The man beside him chuckled, rasping and quiet. His face hidden beneath a hood, only the glint of pale eyes visible. "I've always found weddings disappointing," said Peter Baelish. "Too many promises, not enough blood." Rose glanced at him. "Oh, there'll be blood." The wind howled over the battlements of Riverrun, tugging at Robb's cloak as he stood with grey wind at his side. Below, the waters of the Trident moved sluggishly, as if the river itself was holding its breath. The whispers had started. Lord Carstark's men were grumbling louder. They hadn't forgotten Rickard's execution, and while they fought under Robb's banners, loyalty didn't stretch far in the north, not when blood feuds ran thicker than command. Roose Bolton's betrayal had cracked something deeper than just alliances. It had shaken the faith Robb's bannermen had in him. And then there was Roslyn. She had become a ghost in his court, too quiet, too perfect, too composed. The men watched her like a snake coiled in silk. Robb, despite himself, started to wonder, was she truly on his side, or was her smile just another kind of poison sent by Walder Frey? His mother didn't trust her either, not fully. She didn't say it out loud, but Robb could read it in the stiffness of her nods, the way her gaze never softened. At council meetings, Roslyn remained silent. But one night, she surprised him. "You should call the banners from White Harbour," she said gently, her hands folded in her lap. "Wyman Manderley is slow, but he hates the Lannisters." Robb stared at her. "You know the Manderleys?" "I listen," she said. "You think because I was born in the Twins, I don't understand war. But we heard everything, every raven, every rumour. My father made sure we all knew which way the wind was blowing." He didn't respond, but he remembered those words. 3 days later, a raven flew to White Harbour, and 2 days after that, Lord Carstark disappeared. His men said he rode out at dawn. No note, no orders, just gone. Robb didn't sleep that night. In Harrenhal, Rose Bolton's plan twisted deeper. Peter Baelish had returned to King's Landing, whispering to the Queen Regent and planting seeds in Sansa Stark's ears. But he'd left behind something more dangerous than words: gold. With Tywin's quiet backing, Rose had outfitted his own army in the south, gathering Lannister allies who wore no red lion, just hidden loyalties. And more than that, he had a message sent to Walder Frey. A question: was he truly satisfied with a king for a son-in-law who treated his daughter like a duty? Or would he rather see that crown fall into more loyal hands? Back in Riverrun, Robb prepared for the next move. His plan was bold, risky: retake Moat Cailin, regain control of the Neck, seal off the north, then strike from above and hold from behind. A slow chokehold on the Lannisters. But to do that, he needed the Carstarks. And now, they were gone. Catelyn suggested sending envoys north. Blackfish argued for force. Robb, torn between rage and responsibility, considered both. It was Roslyn who again offered something unexpected. "Let me go to my father," she said one night. "Let me speak with him." Robb blinked. "To the twins?" She nodded. "If he thinks you don't trust me, he'll betray you eventually. But if I go, he'll see I'm yours. That I serve the wolf, not the bridge." Robb studied her face. She was sincere or a master liar. Either way, the game was in motion now, and he knew one truth: the Red Wedding never happened, but something worse might be coming. He kissed her forehead and agreed to the plan. The next morning, Roslyn rode out toward the twins under heavy guard, and miles away at Harrenhal, Rose Bolton received a raven. He read it, smirked, then tossed it into the fire. "A queen now, is she?" he muttered. Then he whispered to the flames, as if the gods might be listening, "Soon she'll be widowed." The roads to the twins were quiet, too quiet for comfort. Roslyn Frey rode with 6 guards, all loyal Northmen, their eyes sharp and hands near, hilts at all times. The countryside had grown tense, villagers too afraid to speak, roads too empty. Rumours hung in the air like fog, Boltons marching south, Freys receiving visitors at odd hours, strange gold flowing into smaller houses who once swore to the Starks. Roslyn, draped in stark colours now, remained calm. She didn't speak much during the journey, just listened. She always listened. One night, while camped near a stream, one of the guards asked her gently, "Are you sure Lord Frey will listen?" She looked up, face unreadable. "He listens to one thing only, power. If he thinks Robb is strong, he'll behave. If he smells weakness, we're already dead." They arrived at the twins 2 days later, greeted with forced smiles and the stench of boiled meat. Walder Frey sat on his throne of filth and bones, flanked by daughters, bastards and sons, none of whom dared speak unless he permitted it. He peered at Roslyn with one squinted eye, the other nearly glazed over from age. "Well, well. The little girl returns. You look fatter. That stark food must be rich." "I came to speak for my husband," she said, straight-backed. Walder cackled. "He finally figured out you had a mouth?" She ignored the jab. "He seeks peace and loyalty. The Riverlands need time to breathe. He'll reward those who stay true." Walder leaned forward. "Loyalty? You think you can ride into my hall and speak of loyalty, while your Wolf King lets my girl rot in Riverrun, like a cold plate of stew? Does he even warm your bed?" Her lips tightened. "He honors me. That's more than most men can say." Walder sat back, his face turning to stone. "Honor didn't win your father any crowns, and it won't keep your husband's head on his shoulders." Roslyn didn't flinch. "But betrayal won't make you king either." That struck something in him. He looked at her, really looked, then he asked, "What is it you want?" She replied softly, "Time and silence." Walder smirked. "You've got my silence, but time, that depends on who else comes knocking." Behind his eyes, something darker stirred. He'd already received Rose Bolton's raven. She saw it in his grin. Meanwhile, back in Riverrun, Robb stood in the war room, fists clenched on the map. Word had come from the north. Karstark banners had returned, but not to Winterfell. They marched toward Dreadfort, toward Rose. It was a betrayal, quiet but deadly. "I should have killed them all," Robb muttered. Catelyn looked tired. "No, then you'd be him. You'd be Tywin." But the time for moral lines was thinning. Every move now felt like survival. The Lannisters were regrouping, and Roose Bolton's army in the south was swelling fast. Suddenly a raven came. This one wasn't from the Freys. It bore a different seal. The Veil. Sansa had written to her mother, secretly, with Baelish's help. The letter was guarded, careful, but clear enough. She was with Peter Baelish. He had the ear of the Lord's declarant. The Veil was in play. Robb stared at the words, hope flickering in his chest. "They could join us," he whispered, "if Sansa convinces them, or Baelish uses her to manipulate you." Blackfish grunted. Robb looked up. "Either way, it's the only move we have." Another voice broke in. It was Mage Mormont, grizzled and stern, just arrived from Bear Island. "You'll need every blade you can get," she growled. "Roose Bolton isn't waiting. He's already moving north with Frey support." Robb's blood froze. "But Roslyn is—" "She might not be enough," Mage said. "If he's made his deal, she's just the coin." And just like that, Robb Stark understood. The Red Wedding never happened, but the knives were still out. They were just slower this time, and colder. The snow came early. Flakes drifted down over Riverrun like ashes from some unseen fire, dusting. The battlements, the training yards, the banners of House Stark. Winter hadn't fully arrived, but it was tapping at the door, and with it came a bitter reminder. Time was running out. Robb stood on the walls, watching the white specks vanish. Against the stone, beside him, Lord Blackfish smoked in silence, his eyes fixed southward. "Frys are stalling," Blackfish said. "Too quiet. No riders, no ravens." Robb nodded slowly. "Rosalind should have sent word by now." "She may not be able to." Robb turned, his voice low. "You think they've harmed her?" "I think you're still treating the Freys like men with honor." That stung, but he didn't argue. They were already preparing to march. Moat Cailleen was next, and then Winterfell. Reclaiming the north was the plan, but Rose Bolton was moving faster. Reports now confirmed it. Bolton had taken control of Barrowton, and the Karstark forces had joined him. Worse, he'd received gold shipments through proxy houses tied to the Lannisters. Still no open betrayal, just a quiet war growing teeth. Maege Mormont was furious. "We should have hanged the Boltons with the Karstarks, cut the rot before." It spread. Catelyn for once didn't disagree, but Robb wasn't ready to burn the whole forest yet. He made one last move, a raven to Howland Reed at Greywater Watch. If the neck could be held, the north could be reclaimed. Reed was a man of myth, almost a ghost, but he owed the Starks. If anyone could outfox Rose Bolton's creeping armies, it was him. Then came the rider. He arrived covered in frost, half frozen, with a broken sword and no name. He bore a torn scrap of cloth from House Frey and a simple message scribbled in trembling ink. "The girl tried. She failed. The twins are no longer yours." Robb's hand crushed the paper in his fist. Rosalind was either dead, imprisoned, or worse, turned. They'd played the game slow, careful, and it still hadn't been enough. The Freys weren't subtle. 3 days later, a second raven came, this time from Edmure Tully's scouts. Frey troops had left the twins and were moving east, toward Harrenhal, in direct coordination with Rose Bolton. The betrayal was official now. There was no blood at a wedding, but there would be blood on the march. And Robb Stark, king in the north, gave the order no one expected to hear. "Burn the twins." His bannermen looked stunned. Catelyn didn't speak. Blackfish just nodded grimly. They broke bread. They broke their oath. No mercy. Maege Mormont grinned. Finally. Edmure spoke up. "What about Rosalind?" Robb's eyes darkened. "If she's still alive, she'll understand." And so it began. The north was marching, not toward King's Landing, not yet, but back home, to reclaim the roots, to draw out the traitors, and burn their banners down to ash. Robb had lost many things, his honor, his heart, his trust, but he still had wolves, still had rage. And in the north, winter had always favored the predator, but in the Dreadfort, Rose Bolton was already preparing for the war to come. He read the messages from Harrenhal and the Freys, and then another stranger letter, one, written in cipher, sealed with a mockingbird. He smiled. Let the boy march. He turned to his bastard son, Ramsay, who knelt by a flayed corpse in the snow. "Fetch our guests," Rose said. "It's time they saw what loyalty earns." Them in the new north. Ramsay grinned, blood under his fingernails, and somewhere in the darkness beneath the Dreadfort, a young woman cried behind cold iron bars. She whispered a name no one would save. Robb. The fires at the Twins could be seen from miles away. It started with the outer towers, wooden frames soaked in oil by northern infiltrators disguised as merchants. Then came the eastern gates, set ablaze under the cover of night. By the time the Freys realized what was happening, the North had already taken the bridge. Robb Stark didn't lead the charge himself. He didn't have to. Lord Wyman Manderly's men struck from the river with flat-bottomed boats, while Maege Mormont's warriors scaled the walls like silent shadows. What they did to the Freys wasn't war, it was vengeance. No courtly rules, no prisoners, just screams in the dark and the sound of bones breaking beneath hammers. It wasn't honor, it was retribution. And Robb ordered it with his own voice. The phrase had betrayed him, had possibly turned his wife into a pawn or a corpse. The time for restraint had passed. By dawn, the twins were broken. Smoke choked the sky. Fray corpses dangled from rafters, spears through chests, arrows through eyes. Those who begged for mercy were gagged and dragged away. Walder Frey had escaped, vanished into the hills with his remaining sons, but his hold was shattered. What he left behind was nothing but charred stone and burning shame. Robb entered the ruins at midday, riding through the blackened gates with grey wind at his side. Ash blew across the stone like snow. Roslyn's chambers were empty. No signs of her. No note. No body. Just a silver hairpin lying in the ashes. Catelyn picked it up quietly and handed it to her son. Robb stared at it for a long time, saying nothing. Then he clenched it in his fist until blood ran between his fingers. "We ride north," he said. Blackfish raised a brow. "To Winterfell." "No," Robb replied coldly. "To the Dreadfort." Far across the snow-covered hills, Bolton stood at the top of his ramparts, watching his bastard train hounds in the yard. A raven flapped overhead, landing clumsily beside him. The message was short. "The twins have fallen. The wolf marches." Rose sighed. "It's always the wolves that come for the flayers." He turned to Maester Polliver. "Ready the gates and send word to Ramsay. No more games. He kills anyone who resists." Below, Ramsay loosed a hound on a tied-up man who dared to hide a Stark banner in his cellar. The beast lunged, tearing into flesh, but Ramsay didn't even blink. He just laughed. But even he wasn't ready for what came next. As Robb's forces swept through the neck with Howland Reed's aid, they moved like ghosts. They didn't fight like proud lords anymore. They struck like angry gods, hit-and-run ambushes, poisoned wells, sleepless nights full of wolf howls and sudden deaths, and Robb didn't shield himself from it anymore. He led from the front, sword always drawn, cold always in his eyes. The boy king was gone now. What remained was the Wolven King, the North's true answer to southern treachery. Word spread through the North fast. Abandoned lords returned to his side. Small folk whispered his name in secret prayers. Even houses that once doubted him began lighting their hearths again. Stark banners rose like ghosts from the snow. But the Dreadfort was no easy prize. Rose had turned it into a fortress of fear. Traps, tunnels, flaming arrows, boiling oil. Worse, he had prisoners, Northerners, allies, and possibly Roslyn. Robb couldn't rush it. He had to break Rose from within. And that's when a raven came, sealed with a strange mirrored wax, half Stark direwolf, half unknown sigil. The letter read, "I can open the gates, but I want something in return. Ah. Not Roslyn, not Reed, not Ramsay. No, Rickon." Robb read it again, slower this time. His little brother was alive, and he had a plan. The Dreadfort loomed on the horizon like a scar carved into the land, black stone and flayed banners, sharp towers rising, like daggers against the grey sky. Snow fell thick now, a steady curtain that muffled sound and blurred outlines. But nothing could dull what Robb Stark felt when he looked at it. This wasn't just a castle. It was the place where the North's soul had been twisted, where betrayal had found a home, where Bolton ruled behind cold walls and colder eyes. But now the gates might not be as closed as they seemed. Robb stood in his tent, rereading the Raven's message for the 10th time. The handwriting was rough, uneven, but familiar. There was something in the shape of the letters, a clumsy confidence, like a boy who wanted to sound like a man. Rickon. Catelyn sat across from him, staring into the fire. "If it's really him, then someone's hidden him all this time." Robb nodded slowly. "Likely Skagos. That's where we sent him years ago. And now he's here, In the Dreadfort, her voice was low, uncertain. If he's alive, if this is real, then he knows something. He has people, and somehow he's offering us an opening. Blackfish stepped in, brushing snow off his shoulders. We scout it first. Send a team through the woods. If it's a trap, we lose 5 men, not 5,000. Robb agreed. That night, Mage Mormont led a squad of the best trackers and killers through the pines, flanking the Dreadfort. Disguised in Bolton colors stolen from fallen enemies, they slipped through the outer roads, bypassed traps, dodged sentries. What they found inside was not what they expected. The inner courtyard was quieter than usual, too quiet. The guard. Rotations had grown sloppy. 2 of Bolton's best commanders were dead, killed not in battle but quietly in their beds. And 1 of the hounds had gone missing, but most of all, they found proof. A child's drawing hidden in the ashes of the smithy, half burned but still clear. A direwolf, a boy holding a spear. The words beneath scrawled in charcoal. I didn't forget. They brought it back to Robb. He didn't speak for a long while after he saw it. Then he stood up, put on his sword belt, and said the words like steel. We take it. Tonight. The assault began at midnight. Snowstorm raging, torches snuffed. They came through the trees like a nightmare, silent, furious, unrelenting. Robb led the charge himself, grey wind at his side, snarling like a demon from some old northern tale. The outer gates fell fast, sabotaged from the inside. The traps never triggered, the boiling oil never came. Someone had disabled them. Inside the walls, chaos exploded. Bolton men woke to screams, to blades, to fire. Robb didn't pause. Every step forward was another ghost laid to rest, another part of the north reclaimed. He found Rose Bolton on the highest rampart, dressed in black, sword at his hip, hands folded like a priest at a funeral. You should have died at the Twins, Rose said calmly. Robb's breath steamed from his mouth. You should have stayed loyal. They didn't waste words after that. Steel clashed, snow turned red. Robb fought like a man possessed, not just for his crown or his home, but for every name carved into Winterfell's stone. Rose was faster, colder, but Robb had something Rose never would: fury. In the end, it wasn't even grey wind that ended him. It was Robb's blade, driven through Rose's stomach until the hilt kissed blood. The flayed man fell from the wall, body hitting stone below like dropped meat. The Dreadfort was his, the north was his. And then a boy stepped out from the shadows, smaller than Robb remembered, but unmistakable. Rickon. The boy looked up, eyes wide. I told you I didn't forget. Robb fell to his knees, arms around his little brother, eyes burning with something colder than tears. Relief. Home. A chance at rebuilding what the South had tried to burn. But the war wasn't over, because as the snow fell and the Dreadfort's gates were thrown open, another raven flew south, straight to King's Landing, straight to Tywin Lannister, and its message was simple. The North has risen, and Robb Stark is still alive. The raven reached King's Landing at sunrise. It landed with a flutter atop the Red Keep, where the air always smelled faintly of smoke and secrets. Grand Maester Pycelle took the message in trembling fingers and, after reading it, nearly dropped the parchment. He didn't bother hiding the fear in his voice when he shuffled into the small council chamber. The North has reclaimed the Dreadfort, he muttered. Robb Stark lives, and he marches. The room fell silent. Tywin Lannister stared at the words. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes darkened, like a shadow lengthening across the table. He was supposed to die at the Twins, he said, voice calm but heavy. Varys raised a brow. Supposed to, but never did. Then Rose failed us, said Cersei, pacing. The phrase failed us. We should have crushed them all when we had the chance. Tywin said nothing, but in his silence, a plan was already forming. He didn't believe in emotion, only strategy, only power. And right now, that power was slipping north. Robb Stark wasn't just alive, he was rising. He had crushed House Frey, he had executed Rose Bolton, and now the bannermen of the North were rallying behind him like wolves answering their alpha. That meant only one thing. The South had to strike first. Back in the North, winter had swallowed the roads. Snowdrifts climbed the walls of the Dreadfort. Fires burned day and night to keep the frostbite at bay, but inside, for the first time in years, the walls echoed with laughter. Rickon Stark sat beside his brother at the high table, devouring salted pork and thick bread with boyish delight. The wolves of House Manderley, Mormont, Reed and Glover filled the hall, drinking and singing songs not heard since Ned's death. Catelyn watched with quiet hope. They were battered, scarred, fewer than they once were, but they were whole again. A family, a North, and they had reclaimed what was theirs. But Robb knew peace wouldn't last, not while Tywin Lannister still drew breath, not while the Iron Throne still saw northern blood as cheap. He gathered his war council one final time. "The South will come," he said, "and they will come hard. They'll want our heads, our names erased." Mage Mormont cracked her knuckles. "Let them come." "They expect us to hide behind the snow," Blackfish said, "to wait, to bleed like fools." Robb nodded. "Then we won't wait." The plan was simple and bold. Strike before the Lannisters could, not on the battlefield, but on the throne itself. They would ride south, not as a horde, but as blades in the dark. Small groups, fast, silent, cutting out the heart of the beast while it still believed it had the crown, a rebellion of shadows. And it started with Sansa. In the Vale, Sansa Stark stood beside Peter Baelish as ravens circled above the eyrie. She wore a cloak of deep grey, the Stark direwolf sewn with silver thread. But the girl who had once dreamed of songs and golden nights was gone now. She had read the letter from Robb. She knew he lived, and that changed everything. "You'll need me," she told Baelish. "The Vale won't move without my voice." Littlefinger tilted his head. "And you'll give it to me, sweetling?" She looked at him and smiled, but not kindly. "No, I'll give it to my brother." When the Knights of the Vale began gathering, their banners didn't bear the mockingbird. They bore the direwolf. By the time King's Landing understood what was happening, it was too late. From the north came a wave of wolf banners. From the Vale came the Knights of the Eyrie. From the Riverlands, old Tully banners rose again. And from the sea, a message came from the Iron Islands. Asha Greyjoy offering ships, not for loyalty, but for vengeance. The Lannisters had ruled through fear, but now fear belonged to them. In the throne room, as the storm closed in, Tywin stared at the Iron Throne, unmoving, unbending, but old. Very old, too old to stop what was coming. Robb Stark reached the gates of King's Landing with half the realm burning behind him. Grey wind howled beneath the blood-red sky. His sword dripped with the history of every betrayal the South had ever dealt the North. And with Rickon at his side, Sansa at his back and the North at his heels, he kicked in the gates to the lion's den, not to beg, but to end it, once and for all.